A 7.2 magnitude earthquake and a tropical storm in Haiti leave thousands of residents seeking aid. This disaster comes in the middle of hurricane season for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. Joe Nimmich is a retired Rear Admiral with the Coast Guard and former Deputy Administrator at FEMA. Dave Grant was previously Acting Deputy Administrator for FEMA. They're both partners at Potomac Ridge Consulting. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Admiral, what type of support does FEMA provide overseas to those hit by natural disasters like the recent earthquake in Haiti?
So the way the federal government is set up, FEMA really has an advisory role. The USAID is the primary provider of support overseas. So much like in 2010, FEMA will send some advisors down. They will help coordinate the elements of the federal response. But FEMA itself is a domestic agency, and the resources that FEMA has, the Disaster Relief Fund, are restricted to U.S. entities. So the funds and the resources that go to Haiti are coming through USAID.
And Dave, Joe mentioned coordination. How is that coordination done? There's so many different groups that descend on a country that are providing support. There's UN, there's USAID, there's nonprofits. How does that work? Who's in charge?
Well, really, as Joe said, for something like Haiti, that would be USAID. So all the coordination would come through that, and FEMA step up with our advisory role, as Joe indicated.
Well, Joe, back to you. The type of planning that goes on at FEMA to prepare for natural disasters. Walk us through some of that.
So virtually every type of natural disaster has a plan, and often the plans include the triggers that would indicate to activate FEMA. The process normally works is all disasters start out locally. And just as an example, what just happened in North Carolina in the Western Mountains, local firefighters and police actually dealt with the immediate reaction. Then the state will look at, say, okay, what roads were damaged? How will we deal with those roads damaged? Federal or buildings or housing that isn't there. And when that exceeds the state's capabilities, then FEMA will come in, and FEMA will come in with resources. FEMA also will take the plans in and set up when there is a known event coming. So right now, Long Island is in the bullseye of the first potential hurricane landfall. We had Fred, which was a tropical storm, but Hermie looks like it will become a hurricane when it makes landfall on the south shore of Long Island. FEMA, through Region 2, is already establishing, through the plans that they have with states and local entities, the communications, the knowledge of what resources are available on Long Island, and what they may need to be moving in terms of generators or other commodities in order to support the citizens that are going to be impacted by that hurricane.
Well, Dave, we're obviously in the middle of a pandemic. How has FEMA had to change the way it operates during a disaster?
Well, Mimi, that's a good question. They've had to embrace social distancing, for one, both internal with FEMA and its federal partners, but also external with the survivors. So, for example, the NRCC, which is the National Response Committee Center, would normally have 250 federal employees all crowded around working together. Under the COVID pandemic, in fact, they've had to spread out. The NRCC is active, but they're going to be in different rooms around the building. So it takes away from the face-to-face conversation. With survivors, they would walk into a disaster response center, and they now are worried whether the first responder is ill. So we have had to test our first responders every day, or provide a proof of vaccination or negative test. And that's just to make sure that our survivors are comfortable. We do also offer testing to the survivors as they come in.
And Dave, there would need to be prioritization now, given that as a result of climate change, there's just a lot more natural disasters. fires, hurricanes, rising sea levels. Tell me about how that prioritization process works.
Well, I'm not sure that the FEMA would prioritize that way. The way a disaster works is the state would have to request assistance from the federal government. Once the president declares a disaster, FEMA goes all in. Now, if another disaster comes up, as it did in the fall of 17 with Harvey, Irma, and Maria, that certainly puts a strain on the agency to respond to one and move resources as appropriate for the next disasters that come up. So FEMA is not a large agency, and it needs to be prepared to work with the state across a multitude of different disasters.
Joe, I know that you were an admiral with the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard is operating now in Haiti. Can you give me an idea of what they're doing?
So they're primarily moving resources to the isolated areas that, as a result of the damaged infrastructure, it's hard for first responders to get there, and then bringing out the most critically injured for medical assistance in other locations. It's primarily their H-60 helicopters that are supporting the international effort that is going on in Haiti.
All right. Well, Joe, Dave, thanks so much for being on the program and talking to us about this.
Thank you very much.
Happy. You have a good day.